Welcome to Move Your Mind. My name's Nick Bracks, and this is a podcast where we have real conversations with real people and give real advice. Alcohol plays a huge part in all of our lives. It's embedded in society, and it's something that we all have to deal with in our own ways and make our own choices about what relationship we want to have with it. I really enjoyed sitting down with my next guest to learn about her journey to sobriety and how she coaches others to change their relationship with alcohol. Sarah Rusbatch is a certified women's health and wellbeing coach, an accredited grey area drinking coach, and a keynote speaker who's sharing her journey to sobriety and the impact of alcohol on mental health to global audiences. Thank you so much for supporting Move Your Mind, and if you'd like to learn more, you can join the Move Your Mind community by going to moveyourmind.me, or you can purchase the Move Your Mind book by going to nickbracks.com/book. Sarah, thank you so much for making the time, and I apologise, as I did offline, apologise for having to change this about 5 times. I've just got back in Melbourne from New York, and I feel horrible, but it's happened with so many, but it makes me more excited to actually finally have the conversation. And I've looked up a little bit on, the work you do, and it looks like you're doing amazing things, and, feel really fortunate to have you on the podcast and excited to, learn about your story. So are you able to just give a bit of a background on yourself and the work you do and how you got to doing what you do today?
Sure. So I'm a grey area drinking coach, which is probably a term that many of your listeners may not have heard before. Maybe I'll start with explaining what grey area drinking is, because up until recently, the conversation around alcohol has been one of two things. You're an alcoholic or you're a social drinker. And for most of us, when we consider an alcoholic, the first thing that comes to mind is someone who's homeless, who sleeps on a park bench, who drinks a bottle of whiskey a day out of a brown paper bag, and wakes up every day needing to drink. But what if you don't tick any of those boxes, but you've still got a dysfunctional relationship with alcohol? Where do you sit? And that's where grey area drinking is. So I like to think of it as kind of this scale of 1 to 10. 1 being someone who rarely drinks, maybe has a glass of champagne at a wedding, and that's it, kind of thing. And 10 being someone who has end-stage physical dependency on alcohol, so needs to have medical support to withdraw from alcohol, because it's really important here that I clarify that alcohol is one of only 3 substances in the world that the human body can die from withdrawal from. The other 2, one of them is illegal, and the other one you can only get on prescription in very limited amounts in any one go. Alcohol is listed as an essential service during COVID and is available for everybody. And so we've got a 1 and a 10 on that scale. 10 being physically dependent, needs medical support to come off it, 1 being never drinks. Both of those are quite extreme. And when you think about it, the majority of the population probably sits somewhere in the middle. I consider grey area drinking as being about a 4 to an 8 on that scale. So we've got past the point where we don't just have a drink when we're socialising and don't think about it any other time. Like that might be a 2 or a 3. Maybe, when we're out for dinner a couple of times a week, we have a glass of wine, we enjoy it. We don't need more. We don't feel like we've restricted ourselves by only stopping at 1. It just doesn't even feature. We just want that 1 or 2. The signs that we're going into that grey area can be things like we make rules around our drinking, because people that don't have a problem with drinking don't make rules. Whereas I just constantly lived with rules. My rules were, you're not allowed to drink on a Monday and Tuesday. You're not allowed to drink before 5 o'clock. You're not allowed to drink on your own at home during the week. You're only allowed to drink at lunchtime if it's with other people. You can't drink white wine on an empty stomach. And so it went on. And I lived by these rules. Oh, I can drink on Thursday because I didn't drink on Wednesday, but I better not drink too much on Thursday because I know I'm going out on Friday and I don't want to be hungover on Friday. And there was constant chatter in my head around where alcohol was fitting into my life that week. A couple of the other signs that we might be falling into that grey area drinking might be that we notice that we feel disappointed on nights we can't drink. So say, for example, you've got to be the driver for the night. Say, for example, you're on antibiotics and a big night that you've been planning, you can't drink. And your first thought might be, oh, well, there's no point in going. Which I was there all the time. I was kind of like, what do you mean if I can't drink? There's no point in going out. A couple of the other signs. Alcohol is starting to really take more than it's giving. We're noticing that it's really impacting our sleep. It's perhaps causing anxiety. We're noticing we're putting weight on. We notice that we don't have the energy, the motivation, the mental clarity each day, and yet we still do it. So we know that it's taking from us. We know that it's having negative impact and negative consequences, but we're still constantly keeping on going. So those are some of the signs that we're falling into that that grey area drinking category. And for many people listening to this, they can kind of probably be like, yeah, tick, because, you know, alcohol is the only drug in the world we have to justify not taking. We live in an alcohol-centric society where it's everywhere. You go down the pub and you say, I've stopped smoking, and the most common response will be, good on you, well done, mate. You say you've stopped drinking, and the most common response will be, don't be so boring, just have one.
Yes.
You know, and so it's hard to change your drinking if you are in an alcohol-centric society surrounding yourself by other people that love a drink.
I find this so fascinating. And I mean, we all, like you're saying, we all can relate to this because it is so embedded in society. And it's odd that, you know, it's something that is legal, that's accepted, that does so much damage, yet we frown upon and shame people for other things. And, you know, I find it confusing because, like, I guess in the past I had a problem with binge drinking, and that was escapism for me. And then my relationship with alcohol became, even when I got that under control, it was very easy for me because of having quite an addictive personality and wanting to take things to the extreme. If I brought it back into my life, how do I then avoid that happening? But, you know, what confuses me with alcohol is, and I've actually on a 3-month break from drinking right now, and I'm feeling amazing from doing that. But the problem I was having is I don't have a problem with alcohol anymore per se, but then I don't feel like I need it. I enjoy the occasional drink with dinner or, you know, whatever. But what started happening is, especially I guess in my life, a lot of people's lives, I would be not wanting to drink, and then it's so embedded that it's like, okay, it's a Monday night, I've got a friend in New York who's visiting, let's go for a drink. Okay, you know, I'll catch up with a friend, have a drink. That leads to a couple of drinks. Feel okay the next day, whatever. Then Wednesday night comes and there's an event on, let's have a drink. Then you see family, let's have a drink Friday. And you're like, hang on, a week went past and I'm not really wanting to drink much, maybe once a week, twice a week at most. Somehow I drank 5 nights a week because it's so embedded in what we do. And then one of those might turn into a big night and you're like, hang on, why is this happening in my life when I don't want it? So it's so difficult to find a balance where you can have alcohol in your life, but then not let it, you know, become too often. And then on the other side, when I stopped, exactly what you said, it's so crazy that, you know, I went out with friends and everyone, oh, you're not drinking. What's happened? What's wrong? Are you okay? Yeah. Making this huge deal about it. I had to pre-warn friends when I came back to Australia, I'm not drinking. Calling them up, are you okay? Why? Oh no, I wanted to have a big night. They're almost saying they're like disappointed. I'm so upset. I was planning and having all this fun. I'm like, we can still hang out. But anyway, it's just such a crazy thing.
And if you're a woman, then the first thing is you must be pregnant.
Yes.
I was at a dinner party, Nick, not that long ago, and there was a woman there. I'd never met her before. And she went to pour me a glass of wine at the dinner table. And I said, oh, no, thanks, I don't drink. And she looked at me and went, why? Are you an alcoholic?
Yeah.
Just like, you've never met me. And so what? Because I'm a middle-aged woman who doesn't drink, you therefore deduce that I must be an alcoholic. I have a client who's a senior partner of a law firm. And every week we meet and we go through his social schedule for work and we decide what he's going to say for every single thing as to why he's not drinking. Wow. Like, this is how messed up our society is. That's
so interesting, yeah.
To be able to sit down, and he does have quite bad anxiety, and he hates the spotlight that is put on him when people go, oh, why are you not drinking? Why are you not drinking? So we kind of have to, you know, he's training for a triathlon, he's, you know, whatever the things are, but we've got so far to go as a society to get to the point where for someone to choose, because let's remember what alcohol is. It's a class 1 carcinogen that directly causes 7 types of cancer. And yet we shame people for not wanting to do it. Like, we shame someone for not snorting a line of Coke or smoking or any of those things. But with alcohol, we have such a different attitude to it.
It's so tricky. And, you know, and I found that even with family when they're having a drink, not that they're even pressuring, but if they're opening up a bottle of wine, everyone's having a glass of wine. Oh, you're not drinking. I'll feel guilt. I'm like, oh, I'm maybe reducing this experience for everyone because I'm not participating. But And then when you really think about it, what's happened to me when I stopped is I love a glass of whiskey, and I'll think about, oh God, my dad's having a glass of whiskey. I'd love to have one right now. And then I try and think it through, and I'm like, hang on, what will be the process? I'll probably have one, maybe a second, feel a bit yuck the next day. How is this actually going to enhance my life? And if I do need this to enhance the experience, then what is lacking inside of me that I can't enjoy this experience for what it actually is? Because and we're using it to avoid the actual facing of reality. But it's a hard thing to really come to terms with. But that's what it made me really question, well, do I actually want this in my life at all? Because I started, once you stop having it, you start thinking, well, even if it's one day out of the year where I'm going to feel kind of crap the next day, wouldn't I rather just feel good?
Exactly. And that was where I got to, because I stopped altogether in April 2019.
Yeah.
And I had just got to the point where it was never one or two. It was always the bottle. Sometimes the second bottle was getting opened.
Yeah.
I had strict rules. So I didn't drink on a Monday and Tuesday because that meant I wasn't an alcoholic, because I could take 2 days off a week. I mean, in truth, my body was detoxing from the 5-day bender that I'd just had. So I was just lying in a pool of sweat and detoxing shakes. And then Wednesday, right, let's get back on it. And what I realized, and what I know to be true, is that for so many people, when you've crossed that line of being a take it or leave it drinker, you've created a neural pathway that ain't ever going to be unchanged. You can't undo addiction. So if you have created in any way an addiction to alcohol, that neural pathway is always going to be there. And that's why for so many people, it's easier to have none than it is to have one. Because I know for me, I never wanted one. I was just like, who are these people that just want one glass? I was someone that as soon as I had a drink, it lit me up. It made me get more energy, energized, life and soul of the party. And I just wanted to keep going. The problem for me was that as a 40-year-old mother, that started to become problematic in my behavior and the things I was saying and doing. I had an accident. I fell over. I cut my face. All of these things that were just I am not being the mum, the role model, the wife, or the friend that I want to be. And alcohol is the thing that is standing in the way from me being that person. So I kept taking breaks. I kept going, right, I'll do a 3-month detox, right? And I would do that and I would feel amazing. I'd be like, oh, this is what it's like to have great sleep, and my anxiety would disappear, and I would lose weight, and I would be really motivated, and I'd be training really hard at the gym, and all of these positives would be happening. But then I'd go back to drinking. And then everything would go to shit again. And then it was just kind of why do I keep going back to the thing that is causing all the problems when I don't do that thing? My life is really good. And when I sat there and looked at it like that, and I remember saying to a friend, right, next time I'm going to do 6 months, because I've never done 6 months before. I've done 3 months quite a few times, but next time I'll do 6 months. And she was like, but why? Why do you have to set a time limit of when you're going to go back to doing the thing that, as you say in your own words, is completely destructive in your life? And when I kind of sat back and looked at it like that, I was like, she's right. Yeah. So I set the date, April 2019, the 27th of April. It was a friend's 40th. I planned a huge night. I was like, I'm going out with a bang, right? And I went to this 40th birthday party. And I left at 10 o'clock and went home and went to bed. I had 2 drinks. I think I was just so done.
You were just over it. Yeah.
And I knew that was it. And I knew that this was the start of the rest of my life.
I love that. And it's so true. And I love what you're saying there about, I think if you've got that pathway with it, if you've got that tendency to addiction, and I know I'm like that as well, where I just enjoy it so much. So then if you have a drink, it's like, well, why not have a second? And then you have a third, and then you're starting to feel the effect of it. And you're like, I want more now. And, I couldn't stop that from happening. Sometimes it might be just having one drink, but the reality is that will creep in and happen at times, and it'll turn into a big night sometimes when you don't want to, and then you wake up and you're dysfunctional for 2 days and you're feeling anxiety. So it's like, well, why invite that in at all? So it's such a difficult thing to do, though, because it is such an enjoyable thing, and in the moment it is. And
in the moment, yeah.
When it's around so much, it's tricky. Yeah.
I think that there's a tipping point. Right, so I think when we're in our, I started drinking when I was 14. That was kind of what you did in the north of England. You kind of just filled a soda stream bottle with whatever you could find in your parents' drinks cabinet, and you went down the local park or the local bus stop, and you got pissed, and that was kind of
making rocket fuel out of the cabinet.
Yeah, Chintano, Southern Comfort, bit of Bacardi, bit of whiskey, just mix it all together, add a bit of Coke on top. And so that was like my initiation into drinking. But when you're young, for most of us, it starts off being like 90% fun, 10% crap, right? Okay, you might feel a little bit dusty the next day, but it's not like you're getting any of that because your body's learning how to metabolize alcohol. When you've been doing that consistently for a really long time, quite a few things start to happen physiologically in the body. So you build up tolerance. When we actually drink alcohol, alcohol causes a big surge in GABA. GABA is the neurotransmitter that makes us feel calm and relaxed. It's a depressant. And that's why you get that kind of feeling. It also lights up the dopamine reward center in the brain, which makes us kind of ping on feeling good. But because the human brain, it wants homeostasis, it wants balance of all your neurotransmitters. And because you get this big surge of GABA, which makes you feel calm and relaxed, the brain kind of goes, no, that was too much of that. I need to release cortisol to balance out the GABA. So in actual fact, most people drink because they're stressed and they think they're relieving their anxiety. But every time we drink, our brain releases a huge surge of cortisol, the stress hormone, to counter the impact that the alcohol has caused. What that means is the alcohol wears off after about 20 minutes, but we're left with this huge excess of cortisol firing around our body. So that's why quite often, if we've had a big bender, we'll pass out and fall asleep because of the surge in the GABA. But then the cortisol will wake us up a few hours later, 2, 3 in the morning, and then you wake up, you can't get back to sleep, and the next day you feel anxious, you feel a bit out of sorts, and that is because you've got all this excess cortisol that's racing around your body. And so many people, I didn't know any of this, and I thought that I was just drinking, to calm after a stressful day. I deserve it. It's just a glass of wine, but of course it was always the bottle and all of that. But it's interesting for us to start to understand physiologically what is happening in the body. And that's why it's often so hard to just have one, because one glass has a little 20-minute hit. But then because of the surge in cortisol, the cortisol then leaves you feeling a bit antsy, a bit out of sorts, a bit anxious, a bit restless. And then you're craving another drink just to get rid of the feeling that was created by having the first drink. And so then that's why it can be so hard to just stop at one or two, particularly for people like you and me that just love that feeling that you get from alcohol. There's a neuroscientist that did a study, and he said you can tell in a room of like late teenagers, early 20s who are all out getting drunk, you could look around the room and tell them who will be the ones that will develop alcohol use disorder in their later years by how they're reacting to the alcohol. You've usually got two groups. You've got the group that have 2 or 3 drinks and then they start to go a little bit tired and maybe go, I've had enough now, and that was enough for me, I'm just going to have a glass of water. I mean, I was never in that camp. No. Whereas you've got the other people that they get lit up by it. You see them, their voice gets louder, their energy gets higher. They're the ones that are going, let's go to the club, let's go into the party. And that was always me. And so the writing was on the wall for me from such a young age that I was going to be that person that would develop the problems with alcohol that I did develop.
Yeah. Thank you so much for supporting Move Your Mind. We're expanding the offerings of the organisation and we're tailoring everything we do to suit you guys and to try and answer to all of your needs and the questions that you send in. The book is available globally. You can find all of the links at nickbracks.com/book. And we've just released the Move Your Mind community. We've currently got a men's community group, a women's community group, a general group. We're going to be loading up other groups. And you can find all of the links at moveyourmind.me. This group's been created based on the needs of what we've heard and learnt throughout running Move Your Mind. And we have live events, we've got courses, we've got huge amounts of value, the ability to share information, share ideas, work in groups together to grow and share your learnings, to learn about different topics. You get email reminders. There's a whole lot of features in there. We're constantly updating it, and we're so excited to share it with you. You can find all of the information about it at moveyourmind.me.
Yeah, and I totally relate. And I think another part of it, this, mental health in general, is we're often doing it when we discover it. I know for me and so many people, it's because we have that imbalance in ourselves. If you've got some sort of mental health thing, and I didn't know that, I had ADHD and I had different things that I didn't know how to deal with or regulate myself because I didn't even know I had them. So then there was this angst and this, inability to produce naturally enough dopamine and this just need to do addictive things, exercise, drinking, whatever can give me that hit and regulate me. And I remember that feeling you're talking about where, after a certain sweet spot where you drink enough that you're not completely drunk, but you're so relaxed, you're like, oh, I can actually, it's like almost you put glasses on, I can see. And then very quickly that turns into excessive drinking and being so drunk that you don't remember anything. And then it's, all a disaster. And it's such a small window, like you said. And the thing I thought as well was I looked back on when I used to binge drink, and every negative thing, most of the negative things that have happened in my life in the past were from alcohol.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, all these bad decisions directly linked to alcohol, shocking things that happened, 99% from alcohol. And then I started thinking, okay, it's dramatically negative, like just so bad. I wouldn't make these decisions ever when I'm sober.
Yeah.
And then, okay, what positives came out of it? And I couldn't really think of anything other than, okay, it was a bit of fun. So I was like, well, it's great. When you think about it like that, it's like they're just drastic negative. And that's not even going into, like what you were talking about, the health, the effects on health, long-term, what it's going to do to you,
exactly,
et cetera, et cetera. It's like, bloody, it's crazy what we're doing.
I know. So what happens when we drink alcohol? Because I was curious as to why I said and did things I would never normally do. Yeah. The prefrontal cortex, which is the rational part of your brain, it pretty much switches off as soon as we start drinking.
Yeah.
That's why for young men, particularly, it can be really detrimental because a young man's prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop until the age of 25. You take an 18, 19-year-old male who doesn't even have a fully developed prefrontal cortex, and you throw in alcohol, which shuts down what is there. And that's when you do have young men and for me, it's not about saying you must not drink, but it's about, I look at some of the accidents that happen, the danger, the risk that of things that we do. I remember being at school when I was 16 or 17, and there was a group of boys and they'd got really drunk and they'd gone driving, and all of them, they died in a car crash and doing things that you would never do when you were sober. It's about understanding. Like, I'm not here to say you must never drink, but I am really passionate about helping people to understand, A, that you don't have to be an alcoholic to decide to stop drinking, and B, let's start talking about some of the impact that alcohol has. Because I interviewed someone the other day who stopped drinking 5 years ago, and she said to me, I feel like we are guinea pigs in the biggest joke that's ever been played on society when it comes to the marketing of alcohol.
Yeah.
And it's, you start looking at some of the stats around the big alcohol and the marketing. I read somewhere that in the UK, if everyone drank the recommended amount, which I think is 12 units a week, the alcohol industry would lose £13 billion a year.
Yeah.
They don't want anyone to drink at the recommended amount. They make their money from binge drinkers, from people like you and me, because alcohol is highly addictive. It's up there in the top 5 most addictive substances in the world. And yet, shame on you if you become addicted to it. Like, the whole messaging and everything around it is, I could talk for hours about it, but I won't. But do you know what I mean? It's so messed up.
It's really messed up, and it's like you said. I think, I don't see any other way around it if you want to have a healthy life. If you do have that addictive personality, I don't think it is. Like you said, I thought it maybe was, but I don't know if it is possible to have it in your life, because it will at some point become a problem if you got that kind of personality. And people would totally get that if, someone was addicted to cocaine, or not even addicted, but they had a problem. They were taking too much cocaine and say, well, I'm stopping cocaine. You'd be like, okay, great. Good on you for stopping, because that's not going to be a positive thing in your life. And they wouldn't be saying, okay, why don't you just casually have a little bump of cocaine here and there? It's like, no, that's inviting it back in. If this person has a problem with it, they're going to re-spark that problem. This person cannot touch cocaine if they've had an issue with it. Otherwise, and it's the exact same with alcohol, yet, like you're saying, we get shamed and questioned if we don't drink. And I like I was saying before, I just couldn't believe it, like the shock and the amount of questions. And I had to then just pretend I was drinking and just start ordering, a soda water or whatever, and pretend it's got alcohol in it, just so people don't question me.
It's insane. And the thing is, like, all of the work that I do with my clients, the first part is removing alcohol. Let's just take a break. But the second part is, well, let's look at your life and look at what's going on in your life, and why do you need it, and what can we add in? Because it's not a case of just removing alcohol and then doing nothing else. If you remove alcohol, you've got to add stuff in to create a life that has meaning, purpose, fulfillment, satisfaction. And if you get all of that in your life, you don't even need to drink. But
No.
the thing about alcohol is it makes us really lazy, because we get a dopamine hit sitting on the sofa watching Netflix. We don't even have to move our bums, you know? Whereas the stuff that I get people to do, it's effort-based dopamine. So you've got to go out there, you've got to exercise, you've got to go and join clubs and meet people and make friends and do lots of those things, and we've just become so lazy as a society. And for lots of my mum clients as well, the thing about alcohol is you can drink your wine whilst you're unloading the dishwasher, making the sandwiches, helping with homework, running the bath, doing the ironing. And so you're getting a little dopamine hit whilst you're in the drudgery and the basics of life. And so it comes down to us having to kind of step back from our life and look at how it's set up and go, right, what do I need to change in order to create a life that I don't need to drink a bottle of wine every night?
Yeah, it's a 10-year anniversary under Bracks, and we've relaunched with the classic white pair. We've also got new styles coming out super soon. We're donating $1 from every pair to mental health, currently to 1 in 5. You can find all of this at www.underbracks.com.
Yeah, and exactly. And it's just having those healthier habits and having this understanding. This is the crazy, and this is why I'm not a psychologist, and I fell into mental health awareness, and it's become such a big part of my life just because of my own trying to understand myself, and then seeing, once I started looking into it and talking about it, probably similar to what you're doing, just being like, what, this can't be right, that these things are one of the biggest issues in society and they're going to affect everything. Why on earth are we not educated about mental health, about how to do this stuff? Because all these things are as a substitute, and, it might not even be alcohol. It might be, well, I'm not comfortable with myself and I can't be still. I'm going to, form an addiction to work. I'm going to form an addictive pattern in relationships. I'm going to do this, that, and the other, because I just don't want to sit still and have to actually deal with what is going on underneath, or don't want to do things that are healthier for me and exercise or whatever it is that's going to naturally, give me what I need. It's just madness that this is not something that we get. It should be more important than learning math and English.
I say that all the time. My son's 12 and he comes home with his algebraic equations, and I'm like, put that away and let's go and sit down. How do you feel today?
Yeah.
What's gone well today?
I love
Is there
that.
anything that you've struggled with today? Like, let's talk about these emotions, because no one ever taught me how to sit with emotions. No one ever taught me how to label, oh, you're feeling disappointed. That's really normal right now. This is what I do when I feel disappointed. Like, no one modeled any of that to me. I just watched my dad go to the drinks cabinet every night. So monkey see, monkey do, right?
Exactly. No, look, we've got about 5 minutes left, and we finish each episode with 5 closing questions. So I guess normally the quick answers, even quicker answers in this instance, just because I want to make sure we can still do them. But I think I'd love to do a follow-up interview with you, because I just think there's so many things to go into.
Yeah, I'd love
on
to.
This topic. It's so fascinating. So I really appreciate what you're doing and you coming in, sharing all of this, and wish we could talk longer. But anyway, these questions, like I said, just quick answers that come to mind. The first one is, what's your best childhood memory that comes to mind?
Oh, my best childhood memory. It would be, the first thing that comes to mind is being in Mallorca in Spain on a holiday with my family, with my brother and my dad, catching frogs in a little pond, putting them in a jar and going and taking them and putting them on my mum's bed. Like, where did that come from? There you go.
That's great. See, I love that question, because it's just so funny what comes up. I love that.
I'll have to go remind my mum of that now.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think is the biggest burden on mental health in society at the moment?
I'd probably say social media and the comparison that goes on, and the fakeness of what people think other people's lives are like, and that the guilt and pressure that then puts on us as individuals.
It's so interesting, because I'd say 95% of the guests that come on here say social media. So it's it's a big one. What is your personal definition of happiness?
Needing and wanting nothing more than what I have in that moment.
Yeah, that's really well put. I love that. I might steal that. It's a nice, succinct way to say it. What are you most afraid of?
I was going to say not having the impact that I want to have, not leaving a legacy behind when it comes to having found the passion that I've found in the work that I do now. But in actual fact, I don't think I am afraid of that, because I've got the evidence that it's working. And so I think that for me, it would be that the world we live in doesn't change the conversation around alcohol.
Yeah. And, it is a beautiful thing and a beautiful feeling when you do find that thing, like what you're doing, talking, being able to think, okay, hand on my heart, this is so meaningful to me. This is like, I'm going to look back and this is the most meaningful thing I could have dedicated my life to. It's an amazing feeling and help people, and I know this conversation will help a lot of people.
And my goal for next year, Nick, is to start talking in schools. Not to go in and say to all the year 12s, you must never drink alcohol, but to tell them this is what happens to your prefrontal cortex. This is what happens when we drink. This is why it's so important to keep safe. This is why alcohol causes anxiety. This is why you're going to feel really low and sad the next day after a big night, because no one explained any of that to me. And to just be able to give teenagers the education and the information is so important.
Yeah, no, it's critical. It's critical. Final one, what are you most proud of?
That I'm changing the legacy of my family, that I have come from a long line of alcoholics, and that my son on Mother's Day wrote me a letter telling me how proud he was of the work that I do, and that nobody else's mum helps all the ladies to stop drinking, was what he said. But just knowing that I have broken that generational pathway of how things are done in the family, and that I can now model to my kids that you can look after yourself, and self-care is not a bottle of wine, and self-care is starting to be able to sit with emotions, understand your emotions, and sit with yourself.
That's really beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that and coming on here and making the time. And just finally, we'll put this in the show notes, but where can we send our listeners if they want to learn more about you?
Yeah, so head to my website, sarah.rusbatch.com. I run alcohol-free challenges 4 times a year, just as a starting point for people to do the first part of the journey of life. And the first part is take a break from alcohol, see the benefits that you get from it. So I've got a challenge, I don't know when this will go live, that will start mid-Jan. So you can head over to my website, have a look at that. And on Instagram, at Sarah Rusbatch, I share lots and lots of information about how to create a life that you no longer want or need to numb from.
Love it. Well, thank you again for making the time. So nice to finally meet you, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Reach out. Let's do this again next year. And I will look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to Sarah Rusbatch for joining me today for Move Your Mind. And if you'd like to learn more, you can join the Move Your Mind community by going to moveyourmind.me, or you can purchase the Move Your Mind book at nickbracks.com/book.